Good day, everyone. My name is Jayant Kapatkar, and I'm speaking live from Pune in India. I would like to welcome each one of you to this presentation, uh, Understanding Time. The topic today, like I mentioned, is Understanding Time. So let's get the ball rolling. What is time? Time is not easy to define. It's not an object. It's not tangible. You cannot touch it. You cannot feel it. You cannot really investigate it. So therefore, we have very little understanding of time. But we all know time does exist. Every time we deal with time, right from morning to the evening, we are dealing with time. Every moment we are dealing with time. So we know it does exist. The definition given by Merriam-Webster for time is as follows. Time is a measurement of events which succeed one another from past through present to future. If you look at this definition, it doesn't say much about time. So we need to investigate time in much more detail, and that's what our focus of our presentation would be today. We're going to make a detailed analysis of time, and we're going to cover the following subjects. We're going to find out what is the location of time, what is the origin of time, where does time come from. We're going to discuss the interaction of time and objects, and we're going to show that time creates space. And the crux of our topic today is that we want to show time is the cause for motion. And also, lastly, we want to discuss time and energy. Okay, can you hear me, Maya? No, Maya, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Maya.
I said I muted everyone by mistake, so I will unmute. Just give me a minute.
No, you can mute everyone, but I'll keep myself unmuted. I'll unmute myself.
Okay, you're now unmuted.
Okay, okay. Okay, so I'm just sorry about that. Let's start off of trying to understand the location of time. According to Newton, space and time were completely independent entities. Their space had 3 dimensions and time had a single dimension. According to Newton, there was no connection between space and time. Space operated in the 3 dimensions and time operated in a single dimension by itself. But Einstein in 1905, with his theory of relativity, made a direct connection between space and time. In fact, he coined the word space-time. They're basically the 2 sides of the same coin. He created one unit in which there were 4 dimensions. The 3 dimensions of space and the 4th dimension was time. That was operating as one unit with 4 dimensions, with 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. But we all we feel that time functions in space. Just to give you some examples, if you see a tree which is about 2 feet tall, and after some time, after a few months, you may see the tree is about 4 feet tall. So you imply that time has had a function on making the tree grow from 2 feet to 4 feet. Or if someone is in location A, and after a few minutes, that person is in location B, you assume that time has had an effect for moving that person from location A to location B. So we think that time is operating in space. But is that correct? Because like according to Einstein, the time was the 4th dimension. But we all know space only has 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z coordinates. The 3 axes of space are X, Y, and Z. There's no place for the time dimension in space at all. But if you see mathematics, a lot of people, scientists, they do a lot of mathematical gymnastics, try to show the 4 dimensions of space-time in space. But there's no place for time in space. Space has 3 dimensions and time is the 4th dimension. There's no place for the 4th dimension in the 3 dimensions. So let's try to understand this in a little bit more detail. Let's try to understand where is the 4th dimension and where does time operate. If you look at time, time has 3 different coordinates. It has the past, it has the present, and the future. And these three coordinates is the full entity of time. So wherever there's time, it must have these three coordinates. It must have the past, it must have the present, it must have the future. So these are the three entities or three components which make up time. But now if we look at space, what do you see in space? Do you see the past in space? No, you cannot see past in the space. Do you see the future in space? No, you cannot see future in space. The only thing you can see in space is the present. What any particular moment when you look at space, you only see the present basically. You cannot see the past. You cannot time travel into space to go into the past. Neither you can time travel in the future in space. The only thing what you see in space is the present. At any particular moment, only thing which is present is the present. And what is the duration of this present? If you look at the smallest entity of time, the smallest entity of time is 10 raised to power minus 44 seconds. That's the smallest entity of time. If you look at this entity, it's really, really a small number. It is 0.44 zeros and 1 second. So that's the smallest entity of time. When that time duration passes by, the current present becomes the past. But what happens then? A new present takes hold. So there's always a present in space. There's never a moment when there is no present. So only thing which is present in space is the present basically. And when the present becomes the past, a new present takes hold every time. And the past which is gone through, it is the image of that is stored in the mind. So mind is where the storage of all the past images are kept there. So what really happens is when the past image is compared to the current present, you get a sense of time. When these two are compared, the past image is compared with the current present, you get a sense of time. So time sense comes up when you connect the the past image with the present image. Let's do a thought experiment. Suppose you didn't have any memory at all. There was no storage of any memory there. What would you see out there? You would only see one particular image. You will see just present basically. You will not see anything at all. You will not see the past. The present will not change. You will only see the present basically. So you can conclude from this, the mind is required for time. So mind is a necessary entity for time. And in fact, mind is the source where the location of time is there. And so that's why we can conclude that the location of time is in the mind. The fourth dimension, which Einstein was talking about, the three dimensions are in space, and the fourth dimension, which is time, is always present in the mind itself. And this function of mind, Vedanta has always been saying this. Vedanta mentions Kala is the word which is used of time in Vedanta, which is a technical word for time. It always mentions that Kala is always present in the mind. So Vedanta always knew that time always operates within the mind itself. So now that we understand the location of the mind, location of time, which is within the mind, let's try to understand where does time come from? Because obviously time cannot come from nothing. There must be a source from which time has come through. Let's try to understand where did time come from. To do that, we need to understand our innermost core. Like Vedanta teaches us, our innermost core is Sat, Chit, Ananda, where Sat means real, Chit means awareness, and Ananda means bliss or happiness there. So today we want to focus on the Sat part of it. Sat means real. This is a technical word for definition of real is technical out here. It is not the real we use in our day-to-day language basically. Here real means something which is unchanging in the three tenses. It has been unchanging in the past, it is unchanging at the moment, and is going to unchange in the future. So whatever meets that definition can only be called Sat, or it can be called real. Now, if you look around our universe, you will not find anything which meets that definition, because everything in the universe has a birthday, it is born, and after some time it will die. So it is not unchanging at all. Even this universe, where such a huge universe, is also not Sat basically from this definition, because it started only 13.7 billion years back, And before that, there was no universe. And it's expected that in some later day, the universe will also come to an end. So again, it doesn't meet the definition of Sat. So what is the only thing which is Sat as per Vedanta is your innermost core. Your innermost core, which is right inside you, is what is called Sat Chit Ananda. And that Sat is unchanging there. So let's try to understand what exactly do you mean unchanging? When something is unchanging, what does that indicate? It indicates that time is present in that unchanging, but time is at a standstill in that unchanging. Time is dormant in unchanging. Time is still in that unchanging. Because it is dormant, it is still, it is unchanging basically. If the time was moving in unchanging, that unchanging would become changing basically. So you can see that in Satchitananda, time is present because it is unchanging, but is not moving. It is dormant. It is still basically. So time is hiding inside unchanging. Now what happens is that our Satchitananda is unchanging, but we don't feel that unchanging part of it. That's because of our ignorance there. Satchitananda is supposed to be non-dual. It's full, complete. It doesn't need anything else. It's non-dual. But because of our ignorance, we forget that we are non-dual. Because we forget we are non-dual, we become a mind with duality. So non-dual Satchitananda becomes the mind with duality. And moment you have duality, the time pops out from the unchanging part of it to a changing mind. So with this changing mind, which comes because of our ignorance, time also pops out from Satchitananda to become a changing mind there. And this mind, this time, is what is the source for everything in the universe. So you can see that the source of time, which it comes from, is also within Satchitananda, because Satchitananda is unchanging and time is hiding inside this unchanging part of it. And moment unchanging becomes changing, the time pops out from this unchanging part of it. So the source of time, the original of time, is Satchitananda. Now let's try to understand the interaction of time and objects. So the question to start off with, where do objects operate? I'm sure many of you might say they operate in space basically, because you see all the objects around in space. But is that a correct answer? If you just analyze it a little bit in more detail, even science agrees with this, that what happens with these objects from the outside world come into your retina, and then in the retina, they may have an upside down image, and that is converted back up in the right way, and that optical signal goes into your mind. And that optical signal is what really you watch in your mind. What is happening is really that what you're watching is the optical signal in your mind, because the mind, the objects from outside are hitting your retina, and it goes into your mind as an optical signal, and that optical signal is what is decoded, and the observer within you is really watching that optical signal and decoding it and watching that signal. So that object which is within your mind is made of vrittis. That's what Vedanta teaches you. And vritti means these are made of mental waveforms. The waveforms of these objects are operating in your mind as waveforms. And since time also is operating in your mind, so time also is a wave function basically. So both time is a wave function, and the objects which are operating in your mind are also wave functions. And we know each object has a birthday. It is born sometime or the other. The universe was born 13.7 billion years back. The sun was born about 4.5 billion light years. And each and everything, like you, me, everyone had a birthday. So when a new object is born, that object interacts with time. So you have a time object, a wave function. So moment a new object is born, it combines with the time function in your mind. And then this time function drives the object to play out the blueprint of the object. Because the object already has a blueprint inbuilt. it plays out the blueprint, and that's what happens in the universe. Like, for example, you see the tree. The tree was born, and when the tree was born, initially the time function will interact with the tree wave function. You have a time tree wave function, and then the time is driving through the object. It becomes a sampling. Then the sampling becomes a plant, and the plant grows into a full-fledged tree. And once it reaches a full-fledged tree, it starts decaying and it dies. So what is driving that the object through these different phases is being done by time, because the time function is interacting with the object wave function, and the time function has the power to interact with the object of wave function and drive it through and create a complete life cycle of that object, basically. Because if you really think about it, if there was no time, the object would be static. The object will not grow at all. So what is driving that object through the different life cycle of the object is the time function, basically. So what's interesting out here is that, let me just one minute. What is interesting out here is that each object has a duration, because every object at every moment, the object is going through a new object, basically. Because see, the sun started 4.5 billion light years back. Since that time, every moment of this sun has been stored as an image. If you have a wave function, and the next second, every next moment, a new wave function is formed with the sun. So that way, the full time and the object wave function is combined and stored as a grand wave function of the sun. And this grand wave function of the sun will have all the information of all the images of all the time, right from its birth to the current moment. This is not only for the sun, but every object in the universe has a combination of time and the object, and it goes through the full life cycle. Every moment of the object is stored as an image, as a wave function in the mind, basically. So the full history of the objects are stored in the mind, basically, the cosmic mind. It may not be an individual mind, but in the cosmic mind, all the wave functions of the sun, right from his birth date to the current moment, and the future suns, as and when the time passes by, they'll be all stored in the grand wave function of the sun, and that is usually stored in the cosmic mind. The example I've shown you is for the sun, but you can say each and every object in the universe, and there are billions and billions, I don't know how many objects there are, and each of these objects are stored in the same way. Every moment of the object is combined with the time and is stored with the wave function. So how does that thing really apply? Let's take this example out here. You have a sun, and there are three people watching the sun from three different locations, basically. There's a person on Earth, there's a person on Mars, and then I assume there are people living in other planets, and there's a person staying in a planet far, far away. Now, the person on the Earth, he will see, the light takes 8 minutes to reach him from the sun. So he's not seeing a now version of the sun. He's seeing a now minus 8 minutes version of the sun, because light takes 8 minutes to reach from the sun. He's not seeing the current version of the sun. He's seeing a delayed version of the sun. So he's seeing a now minus 8 minutes version of the sun. What does the person on Mars see? Light takes 13 minutes to reach from the sun to the person on the Mars. So he's seeing a now minus 13 minutes version of the sun. And the person on the faraway planet, light takes 1 million years to reach him. So he's seeing from the sun. So he's seeing a now minus 1 million years version of the sun. So you can see all the different versions of the sun are stored in the cosmic mind. And depending on the distance he is from that sun, he will see a different version of the sun, basically. The person on the Earth will see a now minus 8 minutes version. The person on Mars will see a now minus 13 minutes version. And the person sitting on a faraway planet will see a now minus 1 million years version. So you can see that this is happening because all the different versions of the sun are stored in the cosmic mind. and you choose a particular sun depending on the distance the object is away from you. Actually, this also happens in our day-to-day interaction with objects around here. Just to give you a small example, if you are standing in front of a tree, which is about 100 feet away, and you have a friend who's standing at a tree about 600 feet away. So what does they see? Do they see the same tree? The answer is yes, they may see the same tree, but they'll see a different version of the same tree. Why? Because the person if you're standing at 100 feet away, you'll see light will take less time to reach you. So you'll see a different version of the tree. And the person who is standing 600 feet away, light will take more time to reach him. So you'll see a much more delayed version of the tree. So you can see that time has a tremendous impact on the objects, and time is creating different versions of the objects, and they are stored in the cosmic mind. And as and when required, people are seeing different versions of the same object, basically. So time has a great amount of influence on objects. Let's talk about time creates space. It is a fact, time does create space. I'm going to show you how this happens. To do that, we must understand the starting point of space, basically. And science will tell you the space started about 13.7 billion years back with the Big Bang, which happened so many years, 13.7 billion years back. But is that the starting point of space? And that's where the confusion starts between science, because it was the starting point of space 13.7 billion years back. But at this moment, is that the starting point of space? No, because that 13.7 billion years is the outer edge of the universe now. So where is the starting point of space at this particular moment? To do that, we must look at space from a different angle. We are so used to looking at space in terms of distances. Let's look at space in terms of time. So if you look at a star which is far away, light will take 5 million years from the star to reach us. So moving closer, if there's a sun, like I mentioned just now, light will take 8 minutes to reach from the sun. And how much time does light take to reach us from the moon? It takes 3 seconds to reach us. And if there's a plane flying in the sky at about 30,000 feet high, light will take 3 milliseconds to reach us. So you can see, as and when the distance of the objects is reducing, time taken by the light to reach us is also reducing, basically. And if you have a tree outside your window, light will take about 10 microseconds to reach us. And if you have the laptop in front of you or your device in front of you, light will take 10 raised to power 9 seconds to reach you. So you can see, as the distances are reducing, light will take less time to reach you. So the question to ask is, which is the point when light will take 0 seconds to reach us? I think the answer is obvious. You keep extrapolating backwards. The observer, which is within you, is the point where light will take 0 seconds to reach us. So t is equal to 0 is a point where light will take 0 seconds to reach you. So the starting point of space should be the observer within you, because that's where the light will take 0 seconds to reach you. And that's where what you call the real space starts, basically. So the implication of this, observer is the starting point of space. This is a very important point to understand and grasp, that the space does start with the observer only. So the observer is the t is equal to 0 for space. And this also must be understood. The observer is outside the space and time, because the space starts with the observer within you, or you can even call Sachidananda, which is the inner core, is outside space and time. And that's where the space and time starts from. The t is equal to 0 is applicable to each and every living being. The example I've given you of the stars, moon, plane, and tree, you can apply the same logic to the objects you can see around you. If you can see the objects around you and you apply the same logic, you will also come to the same conclusion, that the t is equal to 0 the observer within you is the start of the space, basically. So it means that each living being has their own starting point. So you have a starting point which is t is equal to 0. I have a starting point which is t is equal to 0. And every living being in the universe has their own starting point. So space starts with every living being as the observer within you is the starting point. And the other interesting point is that this starting point travels with you. Now, for example, you not tomorrow go to Delhi or any other city and you apply the same logic of showing different objects, you will come to the same conclusion that the starting point is still within you. Or even if you go to Mars and you apply the logic, you will find out the starting point of space is within you, that t is equal to 0. So it's very important to grasp the fact that the observer within you is the starting point of space. And this is where the confusion, like I mentioned, science needs to understand that the starting point of space is the observer within you, nothing else beyond that. So that now that we understand the starting point of the space is the observer within you, let's try to understand how time creates space, basically. Science tells us that the age of the universe is 13.7 billion years. So if the age of the universe is 13.7 billion years, what is the size of the universe? The size of the universe would be 13.7 billion light years. Light years is the distance what light travels in 1 year. And that distance we calculate, it comes to 9.46 trillion kilometers light travels in 1 year. And if you multiply the 9.4 trillion kilometers by 13.7 billion years, you will get the size of the universe at this moment there. So at this moment, if the age of the universe is 13.7 billion years, then the size of the universe is 13.7 billion light years. What happens after 1 second? Now the age of the universe is 13.7 billion years plus 1 second. That's the age of the universe now. So the light has to travel an additional 186,000 miles, which is the distance what light travels every second. It has to travel an additional 186,000 miles now. So the size of the universe will be now 13.7 billion light years plus 186,000 miles. What happens after 10 seconds? The age of the universe is now 13.7 billion years plus 10 seconds. So what will be the size of the universe? It will be 13.7 billion years plus 1,860,000 miles, because that's the distance what light has to travel in additional 10 seconds it has now. What happens after 1 year of the age of the universe? After 1 year, this age of the universe is 13.7 billion years plus 1 year. So what is the size of the universe? It's 13.7 billion years plus 1 light year. So you can see with this logic, as time passes, the size of the universe keeps growing. So it does indicate that the time is what is really creating the universe as such. If the universe age was only 5 billion years, the size of the universe would be 5 billion light years sort of thing, because that's the amount of time light will take to travel from the outer edge of the universe to the observer of the view. So it does indicate that time does create space. And to just take a step forward, we just have mentioned that time functions in the mind. So what is the conclusion between these two statements? It shows that time and the mind is what really creates space. So time operates within the mind and time creates space. So in a way, the mind is what is really creating a space. So your mind, which is within you, and the time which is functioning within your mind, that is the real source for creating space there. Because if there was no time, there would be no space. It would be nothing there. Because time is there, space is there. And time is the source for creating space. So that's a very interesting power of time, is to create space. Now let's take another very, very interesting topic, time and motion. We'll show you out here how time creates a grand illusion of motion there. It's a very interesting idea and concept, and we will show you that that's the only truth of how really motion is created, how motion is generated. And time is the source for the creation of motion also. Let's try to understand this. If you look around, experience has a tremendous knack of fooling us every time. The classic example we see every night or every evening in the sunset there. So whenever you see sunset, what happens? What do you feel? You feel the sun is going down the horizon. But does the sun really go down the horizon? If you think logically, no, the sun doesn't move at all. The sun is fixed in one location. It is the earth which is moving backwards, and you get the feeling of the sun setting in there. So what we see in reality is that we feel that the sun is moving downwards the horizon, but in reality, the sun doesn't move. And that's the experience we get is it's not the real experience, it's a knack of fooling us. Reality, that's not what is happening, but our experience teaches us is that the sun is going down the horizon and we are fixed and we are watching the sun move down the horizon there. Motion has a very similar illusion taking place there. Motion is not what it really appears to be. And time is the source for this illusion. So hold on and be prepared for the magic of nature, how the nature is really fooling us by creating motion the way we feel it is, but is not the way it is really happening. So let's try to understand this. To get the ball rolling, let's try to understand the Einstein theory of special relativity. This theory, which was introduced by Einstein in 1905, makes a connection between motion and time. We're not going to go into details over this theory. The only thing to understand that the theory of relativity, special relativity, makes a connection between motion and time. What the theory says, wherever there's motion, time slows down. That's a fact. Wherever there's motion, time slows down. It could be any motion. It could be someone walking, someone going on a cycle, but faster, someone going on a car, much faster, someone going in a plane, much faster, someone going in an aeroplane or a rocket, much faster. So all the different speeds of people going through, and the clocks of each person is clicking differently because they're going at different speed. And the theory of relativity clearly mentions wherever there's motion, time slows down. And faster the motion, slower the time. So the person who is walking and the person who is going on a cycle, the person going on a cycle, his clock is ticking much slower than the person walking. And the person going on the plane, his clock is ticking much slower and than the person who's going on a cycle there. The clicking of the clock is so slow that it doesn't make a difference to us. There is some calculation which I read somewhere that if you keep walking all your life, you will save about 1 second over your lifetime. So it really doesn't make a difference to our day-to-day living, but only when you start going at a certain percentage of the speed of light, it makes a difference. For this, Einstein had a thought experiment where he had two twin brothers and he sends one twin brother on the rocket and there's one twin brother who remains back on Earth there. The twin brother on the rocket travels around and comes back. The person on the Earth, his clock shows that he had traveled for 10 years. But the person who goes on the rocket, his clock shows he's traveled only for 6 years because he's going up at a fast speed. His clock is ticking much slower. And if he goes back into space and he travels at 99% the speed of light and he travels back and comes back, the clock on Earth will show that he's traveled for 10 years, but the clock in his rocket will show only that he's traveled for 50 days. So that's the beauty of the connection between motion and time. And that's a proven fact that wherever there's motion, time does slow down. And fortunately, which is good, that for us in our day-to-day living, we don't feel it because the clicking of the motion is so insignificant that it doesn't make no difference to us. But this connection between motion and time, we need to understand that. If you look at science, they make no clear explanation why motion slows down time. Motion happens in space, and I mentioned to you, time happens in the mind. So what's the connection between the motion happening in space and the time in the mind? Why should motion slow down time in the mind? So that's where science has no clear explanation why this is happening. but it is happening. So next question to ask, if science is not able to understand why motion is slowing down time, let's ask a basic question. What comes first? Does motion come first or time comes first? Does science believes motion is the cause and time is the effect? The motion causes the time to slow down. Is that the correct interpretation? And that's where I think science is making an error there, because it does motion is gross. We know motion is gross because we see the motion around in space basically. Time is subtle. Time happens in the mind itself. And both Vedanta and science in a way agree that time is subtle and motion is gross. Therefore, subtle things must come first. So time must come first and motion should be the a consequence of the time basically. And we just saw it in the creation of space basically. We just saw that just now. We saw time is subtle and space is what you call gross. And we just saw time creates space. Time is subtle and that subtle object is creating space, which is a gross object. So the correct interpretation of the theory of relativity should be that time, slowing down of time creates motion, not the other way around. Science is believing that motion comes first and that slows down time, but they have no explanation of why motion slows down time. But the correct interpretation should be that time comes first and then that creates motion. So I'll show you now how the slowing down of time really creates motion. So let's move forward. So let's start with the premise now that time comes first and that slowing down of time creates motion. To explain this, we need to understand the space-time fabric, which was discussed by Einstein. Einstein, like I mentioned earlier, coined the word space-time, and actually the correct name for space-time should be a time fabric. It should be space-time creates confusion because you start looking at space in time, but there actually is no time. There's no space in time. There's only time, and time operates in the mind. So the correct what you call definition of the fabric should be, it should be a time fabric. And the images you are seeing out here is the type of images I'm sure most of you have seen in some magazine trying to show the time fabric. When Einstein tried to show his theory, they came out with this sort of fabric. And this fabric is what is made of time. You got to think, it's not easy to grasp, but this fabric is made of time. So if something is made of time, so everything in that fabric is time. So if everything is a fabric is made of time, it must have a starting time, t is equal to 0 of this fabric, and it must have an outer edge of the fabric there. So the time must have this fabric must have a t is equal to 0. And what is that t is equal to 0? We have just shown earlier, the observer is the starting point of this time fabric basically. And the outer edge of this universe is the outer edge of this fabric basically. And you notice out here, this fabric is not continuous. It is made of what you call grids out here, nodal points, because time is not continuous. Time has increments of 10 raised to power minus 44. So each nodal point is an increment of 10 raised to power minus 44 seconds. So if the time starts at t is equal to 0, the first nodal point would be at 10 raised to power minus 44. The second nodal point would be 2 times 10 raised to power minus 44. The third nodal point in that fabric would be 3 times 10 raised to power minus 44. This way, the complete fabric is built up basically. So there's a time fabric within our mind in which you have increments of 10 raised to power minus 44, and the full fabric is created there. But it's very important to understand this fabric is made of time. It doesn't have any space. Does the give impression of space, but this fabric is only made of time. Now let's see how the different objects are placed on this fabric now. We mentioned earlier, the sun is about 8 minutes away. So the sun is placed 8 minutes away on this fabric. The moon is placed 3 seconds away on this fabric. The tree, which may be 600 feet away, is placed about 0.6 microseconds away on the fabric. There's another tree which is 0.1 microseconds away. But the important conclusion here is that the observer is always outside the space-time fabric. So you as an observer are not part of the space-time, at least the observer part of your body may be within space-time. I'm not denying that. But if your observer within you is outside the space-time fabric, logically, you also are the starting point of the fabric, because you cannot say that my observer is outside the space-time fabric, my body is within the space-time, within the space. It cannot happen. You don't have an outer body experience. The observer within you is always with you. Wherever you go, the observer within you is within you. So the starting point of the fabric of the space is the observer within you. So it is always fixed. It does not move. So the main conclusion out here to really understand, the observer is always fixed. It does not move. We feel the observer moves, but really the observer is always outside the space-time fabric. It does not move. So how does motion happen? So we again talk about, Einstein mentioned that wherever there's motion, time slows down. Let's play it other way around. Wherever time slows down, motion should happen. So let's see if that really happens in the space-time fabric or the time fabric. So what happens if time slows down in this fabric? These lines would come closer to each other because the time has slowed down now compared to before. So this fabric has moved closer to each other. So when the fabric moves closer to each other, what happens to the objects sitting on the fabric? They move inwards. So you see the tree out here, the tree is at a certain location, and when the time slows down, the fabric gets compressed. When the fabric gets compressed, the tree has moved inwards. So you see what is happening. If the compression is much faster, the tree will move closer to the observer much faster. If the time compresses more, the tree has moved inside more, because wherever time slows down more, motion is much larger. If the motion is much larger, the compression of the space-time is more, the tree moves closer there. So you can see what is happening here. You are fixed. You don't move. You are outside the space-time fabric. And with the slowing down of time, the motion is happening and the tree has moved inwards. Isn't that an interesting way? Like, for example, when you're walking towards a tree, you feel you're walking towards the tree, but actually what is happening, that you are not moving, the tree is coming closer to you. That's what the grand illusion of motion takes place. Observer is fixed and the objects are moving inwards. Do we feel this somewhere else? Yes, we have experienced this in the past in many different places. You sit on a platform, in a train, inside the train, and your train is stationary, and the other platform, there's a train which starts moving. What do you feel? You feel you're fixed, and you feel the train is fixed and you're moving. I'm sure all of us have had this illusion a number of times. Only when you look at the other side of the window, you find you're stationary there. But that illusion has taken place, that you're fixed and the other train is moving. You get the feeling that the other train is stationary and you're moving. This is exactly what is happening with motion. You're fixed and the tree is moving inwards, but the illusion which is taking place is that the tree is fixed and you're moving. And that's the grand illusion of motion and the magic of nature which has been created there. We have seen this in many other places. Movies we have seen of cars which are stationary, and they show a stationary car and someone is driving, and they show the scenery at the background moving, and you get the feeling that the stationary, the car is moving forward basically. And that again is a grand illusion which takes place. It is exactly what is happening with motion also, that you're fixed and the objects are what are really moving there. But the illusion which is taking place is that the object is fixed and the observer is moving around. The example to give is the treadmill. You may walk 5 miles away on the treadmill, but actually you're not moved at all. That is what exactly is happening in nature also. You feel you're moving like a treadmill and the objects are coming closer to you, but really you have not moved at all. And the other example you can take is Google Map. If you have a Google Map, Usually in the Google map, you see the car is moving around in the map to different location. But you can just imagine if the car is fixed and the map is moving inwards and you reach your destination that way, that's another way to reach your destination. So you can see that illusion which is taking place of motion. And that's, I call it the grand illusion of motion. Nature is playing magic with us. And that's how it is, motion really happens there. So there is something within us, like I mentioned here, there's a potentiometer of time. So whenever you have a desire to move, you reduce the speed, reduce the time horizon, and then you move forward sort of thing. How that is done, I have no clue. Only Ishvara knows how he is creating this magic basically. The same concept is also applies to gravity also. When you jump over a building, what really happens is actually science also has done some experiments to show this is to be the correct way. It is, if we, like again, Einstein has this thought experiments. If we jump out of the window, the person actually is weightless. He doesn't move at all. He is again, t is equal to 0. The space-time starts for him with him also. Actually, what happened is the earth is moving closer to him. And when he hits the earth, he hits the impact basically. From the point of view of the observer, he is not falling down towards the earth is coming towards him. This is exactly what the motion which I mentioned to you. The same thing happens to even gravity basically. So that's the grand illusion of motion, which I've explained to you. And I'm sure this is quite a subject which is quite not an easy subject to grasp. But if you just think about it, analyze it, what I'm explaining to you, you will come to the conclusion what I mentioned to you is the truth. How actually Ishvara is managing this is not an easy subject to discuss. How is he showing different objects are going at different speeds, different areas, how that is interaction between them. So a lot of more analysis has to be done. But the fact is that you as an observer will not move. You are always outside the space-time fabric and the objects are coming closer to you. So the last topic which I'll briefly mention is about time and energy. Time and energy also are interconnected. Einstein had a theory of general relativity, which he talks about the connection of time and energy. He mentioned there in that this theory that time in the presence of objects or energy starts curving around the object basically. Like the example you see, you have an earth sitting on a time fabric, it makes a curving of the time around the fabric, around the earth, and areas which are in the fabric, time slows down in that area basically. So heavier the mass, greater the curvature is going to happen. Wherever time slows down, the time slows down around the curvature. That's what Einstein's theory of relativity talks about. Greater the curvature, time slows down much more. Heavier the mass, the curvature will be greater and time will slow down much more. So there are some examples out here. Heavier the mass, greater the time slows down. You have the sun, which curves the time fabric. So the slowing of the time maybe is there, but not that great. But if you have a neutron star, which is much more heavier, it creates the curvature of the time fabric in a much larger manner. Time will slow down in a much greater way. Then you have the black holes. Black holes has a very, very heavy they are. So they create a tremendous curvature of the time fabric. And they talk about time come to a standstill within the black hole, basically. So you can see the energy and time also are connected, basically. Wherever there is energy, time slows down, or it could be the other way around, where time slows down, energy is created. So I don't not sure which is the one which comes first. Does time slow down, energy slow down time, or does time slows down energy, basically? Slows down, creates energy there. So you can see that time and energy are also very much interconnected. Just to summarize what we have discussed now is that we have shown time is a function in the mind. It does not operate in space. So time is definitely a function of the mind itself. And I call time the king. Time controls everything in this universe. Time creates, and doesn't create objects, but it controls the objects, creating the full life cycle of the object. It drives the object through its full life cycle, basically. And we have shown that time is created, space is created by time. Time is the cause of space. And motion also is mainly due to time, basically. Motion is due to the slowing down of time. So, and time and energy also are connected. So I've given you a very broad overview of the different aspects of time, which I don't think many people discuss or I try to understand this. But time has tremendous effect on our day-to-day life. I call time is the king. It controls everything and everything. So let me now just, I finished my talk. I just wanted to introduce my book. The book is called Science Meets Vedanta, which I launched a few months back. And this book has about 37 essays and it has about 345 pages. And this book is available on Amazon, Flipkart, all around the world. It comes as an ebook. It comes as a Kindle Unlimited, paperback, and hardcover. And I'm very happy to announce in this session that Crosswords in India have now decided to sell my book through all over the country now. They test marketed this book in 2 different stores, one in Pune and one in Mumbai. And they found the response to be much better than they expected. Now they're taking the book countrywide now. So another month's time, or month and a half's time, 6 weeks time, the book will be available in all the Crossword stores all around the country. And my contact out here is jayant@staminteractive.com. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. With that, my talk comes to an end. I'll end my sharing and I'll request Maya, in case anyone has questions, I can answer them basically. No, I stopped sharing.
So there's
Yeah.
So there is a question from Haripriya Munipalli, and she's asking if a person who falls from above has a mind which is at t = 0 in that condition, does he not hit the ground hard and get injured?
It does actually, the Earth, because the time is slowing down at a speed of t is equal to t square, basically. It's time is slowing down very fast. And the Earth is coming towards the person at a very fast rate. And you'll definitely get hurt because it's coming at such a speed and you are at you and you get hurt definitely. Something's, if you're standing and someone throws a ball at you, you'll get hurt. You can't deny that you won't get hurt. The same way, the Earth is coming towards you and you will definitely get hurt. Yeah, so definitely, because, but you're not moving. That's the grand part of it. You're not really moving. You're outside space-time and you are stationary there and the Earth is coming towards you. But as an observer, outdoor observer, he sees differently because each one is his own observer, basically. So the person who is falling down has a different experience than the person who's watching the person fall down from the building. His experience is different, basically.
No, I'm asking if the person who is falling has the t is equal to 0 condition in his mind. Will he experience the same as what he does when he doesn't have that condition?
Yeah, because if he's falling down and the Earth is coming towards you at a very fast rate, you will get hurt, and that's the experience. What really happens, but you feel it's the other way around. The way right now, actually, the tree is walking towards you, but you feel you're going towards the tree. So you have that conditioning where you are going. The person also feels he's falling to the Earth. That's what he feels. But actually, what is happening is that the Earth is coming towards him. Exactly, that sitting in the train, like I mentioned to you, you are sitting in the train and the other train starts moving. What do you feel? You feel you're moving and the other train is stationary. So that experience is still happening with that person falling down. But in reality, if you analyze what is really happening, is that person is not falling, the Earth is coming towards him, but he doesn't experience that way. He still experiences that he is going towards the Earth, basically. The same way, like sitting in the train, you feel the other train is moving, but actually that's not what is happening, basically.
So according to you, as long as we have mind, there is no possibility to come to the condition of t is equal to 0 as long as we have mind.
Yes, correct. You will always experience that you are walking towards the tree. However hard you might say that will make the tree walk towards you, the tree will not walk to you. But logically, if you think logically what is happening, the tree is coming towards you, but your mind is working in such a way that you feel you're going towards the tree. But
Yeah,
analyze, like I
but
mentioned, yeah,
then
sorry.
then how can you explain the experiences of enlightenment like darshan of one own self by rishis who
Yeah.
experience it as even though they have mind?
The people who have self-realized people, if you think about the self-realized people, they really don't have a mind. Their mind is not, they're not functioning through the mind. They are functioning through their self-realization, basically. They are in Satchidananda, and they're just watching the mind happening. The mind is operating. They're not part of the mind at all. They have gone away from that. The mind is, for them, the mind is dead, and they're just watching what is happening in the mind.
Yes, exactly. So that
Yeah.
is what I'm asking. So if the condition of the person who is falling, that's why the rishi is falling. If he doesn't connect with his mind, what is his experience compared to the person who does not realize, is not realized?
I love to ask a Rishi. I logically he will not. Yeah, I love to. I feel he will experience that he's the earth, but actually not that, because it's a little bit more complicated. There are two different worlds in the universe. There, one is the world of the content, and one is the world of the form. Basically, the rishis live in the world of the content. Basically, they don't live in the world of form at all. So when they're falling and all that, is basically everything in terms of form, the form. Basically, they're just watching it happening. Basically, they feel. I don't think the rishi will experience.
Even I heard Ramana Maharshi stories about Ramana Maharshi that he wanted doctors to do the operation while he is awake. He advised doctors not to bother about him because I will not feel anything, he said. That's what I heard about him.
That's correct. That's because he's not, doesn't have the body, he doesn't have the sense. The mind will have this, but he's away from that. He's watching it, basically. Like he says, he has mentioned, Ramana Maharshi, that while sleeping, he can see himself snoring, basically. So he's watching himself snoring. So he's away from that sort of thing, no?
Oh, probably the suffering, he's not suffering, probably.
No, he's not suffering.
No, he must be suffering. How can he not suffer? As long as the body condition is there, he will suffer, but he's watching it. He's in it as well as he's watching it.
Oh, that's probably he will get the, probably he will get the strength by this Brahman to bear that suffering.
Yeah, but he's, anyway, it's a difficult point to answer, because you have to be self-realized to really to understand what they feel, sort of thing, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any, some Kish Ranai is also asking a question. You mentioned time is a function of the mind, as mentioned in Vedanta. Can you let me know which Upanishad where this is discussed?
I think most Upanishads talk about, because everything happens, a projection of the mind, because Vedanta is very clear that the universe is projected by the mind itself. There is no reality outside. So I can't mention a specific Upanishad, but I think I get the impression that most, it's quite a known fact that mind, the time functions within the mind itself, and then the creation of the mind. So I will not be able to answer a specific Upanishad, but it is a fact that time does operate within the mind itself only. It doesn't operate in space.
And the other question is that you mentioned that if an object is born, from the day it's born, all its waveforms are available in the cosmic mind. That's what you said, right?
Yes, correct.
Now, in order for someone to see all these waveforms, does it mean it has to be at t equals 0?
No, yeah, that's what. If you are self-realized, then obviously, I'm sure, like Krishna in what do you call, in what's the name, in Mahabharata or Bhagavad Gita, he talks about that he can watch. He knows the history of everyone and everyone, sort of thing. So he knows. But so the T is equal to self-realized person. But I'm sure the self-realized person will not try to investigate into those sort of things. So he's so much into his own self in terms of awareness. So he's not going to start investigating into people's mind. But I'm sure if he's required, he can do that. Basically, he has the capability of doing that. Does that answer?
For us, for day-to-day people like us who are not always in the now state, right?
Yeah.
When we see your object, are we seeing the waveform at a certain point of time of that object?
See, the way actually the way it works is that there are no objects outside. Basically, if you see an object outside, if you really think about it, there's no now objects outside. Basically, everything
they all
outside.
pass.
They're all recorded objects, basically. Everything
Okay.
outside is recorded objects, basically.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's a fully functioning now universe within you as such. And that's what the now universe is there. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other question?
No, I don't see any other. There's someone asking a question, put up their hand.
Okay.
Someone put up their hand.
They can unmute and talk.
Mr. Jogarao has a question.
Yeah, okay.
Please ask Mr. Jogarao, what is your question?
You can unmute and ask. Yeah.
Okay. Now, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
In both in Katha Upanishad as well as in Mandukya Upanishad, the time is continuity is of Atma is given both in all the three phases of your living, both in when you are awake or when you are dreaming or when you are sleeping.
Yeah.
And you don't have, the time, you can't have all this, any one of them with other things. That means they are mutually exclusive as far as time is concerned. What I'm saying is you cannot sleep when you are dreaming, or when you cannot dream when you are awake, like that. So
Yes.
the time concept is, it is a continuity. That is Atma or Turiyam, they call it. The fourth dimension is continuity,
Yes.
always. So
Correct.
there, how do you explain this time concept? Because after all, the Turiyam or the fourth one, which is awake all the time. That means whether it is dream time or whether it is sleep time or whether it is
Yes.
awake time, waking time.
Yes.
So it is available all the time.
That is
That
correct.
means for it is time is t is equal to 0.
Yes.
Can I take it like that?
Yes. Because t is equal to 0 is the what do you call that? The observer or the Turiya state, the fourth state is t is equal to 0 basically. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, for fourth state, for the PM they call it in Mandukya. It is
Okay.
the fourth is always awake. That is, it is continuously available. There's
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
like, so I think it gives you a description of t is equal to 0 all the time for
Yes.
for
Yes.
Satchidananda.
Actually, because Satchidananda is the ultimate t is equal to 0. Because of
Yes.
our ignorance, the mind is created. The mind is as though created by Satchidananda. So that the t is equal to the mind also is t is equal to 0 basically. As long as you have ignorance, t is equal to 0 is your mind. If you don't have ignorance, then your what you call t is equal to 0 is Satchidananda basically, which is unchanging, and it's unchanging in Satchidananda.
That is what the Upanishad says. Is during your waking time, your mind is fully open, like a full-blown flower.
Yes.
Whereas during dream, it is half-blown. It's just now coming up. Whereas
Yes.
in sleep, it is almost closed.
Yes.
Something
Correct.
like.
Correct.
But at the same time, the Antaratma or the Pratyagatma is always there inside, for which
Yes.
time is 0.
Yes.
So for the other three stages, there is time.
There is time. Time is changing because all the dreams also you have continuity is there. You experience the time basically because some object is here, then the object is there, some you are there, not there. So it moves around. So the changing time is there in the dream state. But that time has come through from your inner core basically, which is unchanging, that becomes changing basically.
Exactly. That's what I meant by the Mandukya concept of
Yes.
Turiyam.
Yes. Thank you. Thank
All
you.
the
Thank
time.
you. Thank you. Thank you for your suggestion. Yeah. Thank you. I agree. Yeah. Maya, any other question?
There are none in the chat, but
Okay.
if anyone wishes to ask, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I have a question.
I already have one question, Maya, typed over there. Can you
Oh,
please?
okay.
Haripriya.
Oh, okay. You put one there already. I think I
Yeah.
asked the, okay. Okay. Haripriya is asking, I request you as a senior most person and a scholar in this field to suggest to me how to get rid of all the other waveforms in my mind and reach a place where T is equal to 0 in my mind before I leave my body.
Oh, that's you are a student of Ramana Maharshi. You talked about Ramana Maharshi. His what do you call? He has the most direct way of reaching your inner core. Basically, is to find the source of where the I comes from. Basically, where is awareness? You got to find out the source for awareness, because right now, if you are aware, you could, when you say I am aware, that feeling of I am aware is what you have to be at. Basically, that's the stage you have to be at. Awareness is what is the underlying reality of the universe as such. And Ramana Maharshi talks about a direct way. You ask your question, who am I? And when you say, who am I? You get a feeling of I-ness in that. You try to go towards that I. When you go towards that I, all the other thoughts are gone, and you start living in that the feeling of I. And when you start living on that feeling of I on a continuous basis, you can improve yourself to reach the final goal, basically. So it requires a lot of practice, and it's not easy because your mind gets diverted all around the place. But once the mind gets, when you have some time, you bring your mind back into a T is equal to 0 location sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
I think someone else is, I think that.
Yeah,
Kaveri,
that's me.
Yeah, Kaveri. Yes, yes. Tell me,
Yeah.
ask, yeah.
You know, I've been reading this a book of yours and about the time thing.
Yeah.
So in the last third paragraph, subject and object are needed to complete the awareness process. To be self-aware, the subject and object must be within awareness itself. How can that be? Subject and object must be within awareness itself with no separation.
Yes, the bulb which is shining, the inner core, which you call Sat Chit Ananda, that Sat Chit Ananda to be functioning, what happens is that in the mind, the subject is here and the object is outside, basically. There's duality, basically. The subject is within you and the objects are outside, basically. So that's what happens with the mind. But in self-awareness, the subject, when you say you are self-aware, what does that mean? It means the self is aware of the self.
Yeah.
So that's what self-awareness means. In this case, the self is aware of the self, means the subject is also the self, and the object is also the self, basically. And that is rolled into one. And once you reach that stage, there's no separation between self and subject and object. It's one entity. And that is what your inner core is, basically. And that inner core, since the subject and object are together, it has the power to generate awareness. And that's how the awareness is created. And the self inner core is radiating awareness. But since you've forgotten that you are subject and object both together, because of the ignorance, the separation takes place. As simple as that. Just because you have forgotten your self is equal to subject and object, because you've forgotten that, this separation takes place. Ignorance has that power to separate the subject and object from self-awareness to create a changing mind, basically. So within, it's not an easy concept to grasp, because you just have to understand there is some entity within you in which the subject and object are one. That's all you can just explain, and you have to visualize that, basically. It's not easy to, not even easy to, what you call, stay in that mind, but you just have to understand there's some entity within you in which the subject and object are one entity, basically.
I think it's what the known, the knower, and the knowledge is one.
Yes, correct. Yes, correct. That's all three: subject, object, and the intelligence, or you call it knower, known, and known. They're all one as one entity because of, because when you say self is aware of the self, that means self is the subject and self is the object also, and that they're one unit, basically. That's the state you have to reach. That's what is self-awareness is, basically. When you say self-awareness, you're aware of yourself, basically. You have to be.
But what about the other objects that we see in the universe, that they are objects, and then we, when we are observing them, the observer and the observed are different, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
I mean, I think this one is still the mind is operating. If you see any object out there, that means you are still looking at duality.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the point when you become non-dual is where you are one with everything. That means you are in same level with the consciousness as around the
Yes.
whole that pervades the whole world.
Correct. That's correct. What is self is it's not an easy state to reach. The only thing you can do is to say I'm aware. When you say I'm aware, that's a state you are aware, because you're looking at awareness as an object, and you are awareness. So when you say you look at awareness, you can be self-aware for some moments, basically, And we can, if you say I'm aware, if you're aware of the surroundings, that surrounding itself, you're aware, not of the object, but you're aware of it. That awareness you can live into, that you can reach that stage, but it's very momentarily, because then again you get distracted by things, and your mind goes around the place. But there are moments when you can have that self-awareness, and if you can increase that duration and the timing, then whenever you have free time, you try to become self-aware, sort of thing, and then that becomes your resting place, basically, of your day. And over a practice happens, that becomes your resting place. And then you want to go back home, and the home is that self-awareness location. It requires a lot of practice. It's not easy. Yeah.
A lot of practice.
Yeah.
Jayant,
Tell me, Sachi.
Here. I have no questions to ask you, Jayant.
Yeah.
It has been mind-boggling to me how you have gone so deeply into this. So therefore, I will conclude saying that Guru Shishya Parambara continues. Thank you very much.
Yes, Sachi is just for people who are not there. Sachi is to be my first boss in Philips, so he's my. When I joined Philips, he was my guru, sort of, in some ways. I'm very happy to connect with him again.
The Guru turned the table.
The Guru Shishya Parambara continues, and I'm delighted to be in this conference today, and all the future things which come in. Time permitting, I will be one of the first attendees to your.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sachi.
Very much.
One more thing I need to say.
Yeah.
Really very, very difficult to go through your book.
Yeah, it is. It's not easy. I understand. It's not easy, but it requires you have to start somewhere, sometime, because it took me also a lot of years to reach this stage. So it requires. It's not easy, but you have to be at it. It's always the starting point is there. It took me about 14-15 years to reach this stage of grasping, basically.
Right.
But
Jayan,
I
Thank you so
attended
much.
a talk in Mudanali recently. And then as soon as I attended the talk, I bought your book. And I was wondering if I have any questions, can I send it by email?
Definitely, most welcome.
Okay.
I'd love to connect with you, and any questions.
I think, does Mr. Jogarao have a question? Sorry for interrupting, but I was just looking through all the chat on the chat screen, and I see that Mr. Jogarao is got his hand up. Do you still have a question, Mr. Jogarao?
The same thing what earlier has told, that if you have some questions to ask, can we send a mail or any stuff or whatever?
We can talk in mail. If it is a very complicated question, we can talk on the phone also, because sometimes answering on a mail becomes not easy, sort of thing, because it's some of these topics can be very complicated and complex to explain in briefly on an email. So we can set up a time to do a conference call or talk on the phone. I'm most welcome to do that.
I want that. Okay.
Definitely. You. Anytime we can set up a time. I would love to talk to anyone who wants a question, sort of thing. Yeah.
I got to you through Mr. Ram.
I know that Ram is my wife's co-brother-in-law. So, yeah.
I had an occasion to meet him recently.
Thank you.
Retreat.
Yes,
so from there on, I started talking to you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you in the future.
When you have a conference call, will you include me also, please?
Okay, definitely. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No problem at all. Thank you.
Jan, I see Ashok Sabra, perhaps waiting to answer many questions. But I must thank Ashok in particular to have reintroduced us to a much bigger role, greater role and understanding. Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say so, Sachi. We all have a lot of respect for you.
Yeah. True. Very true.
These are
Very,
facts.
that's a fact.
These are facts of life.
Yeah.
One leads to another and another and another. Sat Chit Ananda.
Yeah, his name is Sachinanda. His surname is what it is. Great. Thank you. Thank
Maya,
you.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions,
Long-
Maya?
Yeah, I'm
long
just
year.
checking. Just.
Please go ahead.
And regarding, there's a general question about recordings of this session. So how do people get it from you?
I will, all the people who attended today, I will send an email, latest by tomorrow, with the recording basically. So all the people who attended, and the people who are registered also, and who could not attend, they will also get an email, or who have previously registered for one of the webinars, they will get an email by tomorrow with the recording, and they can listen to that, and they can pass it around to their friends and colleagues if they want, sort of thing, family and friends.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the session. If there are no more questions, so just a last check-in. Does anyone have any questions? No, it looks like there are no more questions. So we will end, and we've spoken a lot today and learned a lot. And I hope the session was good for all those who attended. I close the session now. There is one thing though that I need to say, that a survey will be presented to you at the end of this session, and please answer. There will be some 2-3 questions. Please answer those questions. And with that, I end this session. Thank you all for coming once again and being part of this session. Namaste.
Thank you.